Hi everyone, I am outside, so there's a little bit of white noise, but I felt like this was the right kind of space to connect with some reflections ongoing about the Berlin conference experience. So it's always the way when you go away somewhere and you're thrown straight back into the pot of your other tasks and responsibilities and interactions. There's a kind of calibration process going on where you're trying to pull the experience of another space and place into your current reality, and maybe infuse that with some of the insights and things that you feel that you maybe want to integrate that perhaps were not part of your process before. So there's been quite a lot of that going on. I thankfully had a couple of days just to ease back into a sort of rhythm here, although I find this time of year, after summer's coming to an end and there's been a big push of energy with lots of things going on, it's quite an irregular time of sorts, with lots of things falling onto your plate. So with all that being said, I think things have been flowing pretty well, and it occurred to me also that going into a space like that, you're taking multiple elements of yourself with you because of the quality of that environment. So for me, definitely, of course, there was a professional hat or aspect, and certainly an entrepreneurial one. But then there's the kind of personal self that wants to navigate that kind of space and also be a part of that conversation and feedback, to offer a reading on, how do I feel actually, me as a person, navigating this space and having these kind of conversations, and does that feel like the kind of space that is comfortable for me to be in? And I think also the emotional quality is generally something that I've been pulling more of that into my reference point, I would say, in allowing myself to check in more regularly with that emotional understanding, really. So it felt quite powerful to go into a space that maybe from the outside would seem like quite formal, and because it's bridging different modalities and that there's academic threads that are kind of woven into the presentation of everything, and it's following a kind of a formalized structure, if you like, it can feel quite radical to bring an emotional self into that space. But I feel like it's important to do that also in an appropriate way. But as far as being present, say, with what is my authentic expression telling me, and how am I showing up in this space? So it was a good exercise for me, really, to be putting my 5-element perspective into practice, and really asking myself what is going on in my body today, what is going on in my mental space, what's happening for me emotionally, how am I feeling in the social dynamic, and then on a very personal level, how am I feeling spiritually in sense of my internal connection, and how much of that I'm allowing to come through me and permeate and be expressed in the space, and also to allow there to be a little bit of room to connect with other people on that basis too, because it's very easy to be funneled into a quite linear trajectory of maybe only meeting people part of the way and not allowing there to be room for an organic intersection in your conversation of ideas and sharing energy with each other. So to be able to explore that in a space where there were people from all different disciplines and different parts of the world felt really really supportive. And I think to be able to do that in Berlin as a city also provided a really rich foundation for those conversations, because Berlin, although I don't know it and that was my first time visiting, does feel to be really quite dynamic, and that there's actually a lot of room for people to channel their creative expression and their innovation in novel and interesting ways. So those are my kind of general reflections that I feel have been saturating and have been finding a language within me over the last week that I can more clearly articulate now. And in terms of the impact that space has had and the opportunity to be having dialogues that ultimately are increasing your window of perception about your own work from the perspective of someone else looking inside, that is so valuable. And I think it's when you've come to a culmination point and you're actually ready to share, it's also a point where you're ready to receive feedback. And I feel like in terms of the social element, if I think about the 5 Elements of Voicework framework that I use, that is a real key in terms of the next stage of growth and development, because we can spend so much time doing lots of internal work and maybe putting some of those things into practice in terms of our creative expression and finding outlets for that. But the value of then being able to share that and have that reflection and that kind of edge, if you like, of another person with a different perspective and different ideologies to beam back to you is really important. And the readiness of that also makes all the difference, because thinking of an example of, say, when you share something with someone really close to you that maybe knows you very well, maybe a family member, the boundary of that space of offering insight or advice or words of wisdom often comes uninvited. And when we're not ready for that, those words and reflections can land for us in a way that feels a little bit, there's an incongruence there, and it can actually create disruption within you. Maybe you have not yet come to a point of resolution or peace even within yourself about, this is my position on this right now, or this is how I feel about it. So having that prematurely can create a ripple effect. And if you're in a space where a lack of confidence is something that has permeated your experience, particularly in relation to the things that you decide to share with others, that can be damaging. So allowing yourself to bring something to the table when you feel like this is the right time. Maybe the piece of artwork or the idea that you have to share is not in its final iteration, and that's probably true. But there's enough space there and enough consolidation that has compartmentalized some of your processing and tidied some of it up. So therefore there is more room for someone else to be offering energy back to you, and that there's actually room for you to receive that, and that the safety piece in there definitely feels important too, because it takes energy for you to be able to be in a grounded quality of space that enables you to have some anchor point and some root and connection to your sense of self and identity, and what are the things that I need to help me stay rooted. And that doesn't mean to say that you're not able to integrate new ideas or feedback. It means that you're better able to do that, I believe, because you have a supporting foundational structure that allows you to weather storms. You can move like the tree, and you're connected into your sense of awareness, something that you have been cultivating that's unique to you. And that's a quality of inner strength, I think. And also that connection point allows you to, in a more embodied way, acknowledge when feedback or reflections from other people are maybe not congruent. They're maybe not ready to land, or you just recognize that's interesting, that's not how I see or feel or interpret this, and that can be okay. There can be a sort of sacred no happening within your body, your interoceptive awareness that's like, okay, that's not for this time, or that reflection, it doesn't ring true for me right now. And I feel like that's a really powerful experience to receive that, because what it allows is the opportunity for you to keep connecting with what it feels like to actually have that boundary, and to have that opportunity to say, okay, thank you, but no, because ultimately in our dialogues and interactions, I think most of us would feel that we want to have a harmonious way of intersecting with other people. So to be able to gracefully acknowledge that there's a difference of opinion or idea, and for that not to be earth-shattering or to feel like there's a huge amount of guilt or upheaval attached to that in your internal space is really powerful. So I just wanted to bring in that reflection, because thinking about offering tools of cultivation for creative expression with students, and providing opportunities and inviting them to move to the next level with that and start to share that voice with others. Also to see how it feels to have a real interaction where you're taking things away from that drawing board and that theoretical space and bringing it into a reality with others where you get to feel what it's like to play and to dialogue and to have an experience and a reflection of other people perceiving you and receiving you as well, because that's important to feel that you can be received. That doesn't have to be the pinnacle of how you build your sense of self-worth, by no means, but having recognition and having understanding and having exchange with other people is absolutely, I feel, a really integral part of a process that feels helpful, it feels affirming, it's very human, it's something that we need, and it's very therapeutic also. And I do feel that the space that I've just been in, by its nature being very social and busy and full of lots of conversations and energy, and feeling like I was able to navigate within that space in a way that reflected the fullness of where I am, what's going on for me, and what ideas I'm swimming in. That was really, really valuable. And I would say from a confidence point of view, I can feel a shift within me, and I think the point of awareness of that coming through has been communicating itself in stages, but it was almost immediate for me. So the opportunity to recognize, oh, I'm about to do something here that feels a little bit out of my comfort zone, and it's bringing up some performance anxiety, and it's triggering some old stories related to kind of, oh, how is this going to be received? So it's activating these narratives about self-worth that you're kind of trying to quieten in terms of the noise of your inner landscape, so that you can connect with, this is my message, this is why I'm here, this is what I'm doing, and this is what I want people to hear and feel and sense from what I'm saying. And once that swell had subsided, which could only happen by harnessing that energy and gathering it up and taking it and running with it and pursuing the communication irrespective of that feeling, because there was an allotted moment in time that this presentation process was to happen. Although it felt quite uncomfortable in the moment, then came the relief of that adrenaline and that cortisol and everything just finding its outlet, which then allowed the subsequent conversations that were had in the space afterwards to flow with more ease, and I felt more connected and more self-assured, because I was like, okay, I've had that wave and it's come and it's reared its head and it's wanted to let me know, like, you're doing something here that feels a little bit out of your daily context, and you've not done this for a while. So I was just forced to meet that, and having opportunities in a performative sense to meet that discomfort is really important, because it gives you that opportunity to start to track what is going on for you internally, and to orientate yourself. Where am I? What's going on? Which part of me feels like it's activated right now? And also to deepen your quality of listening and conversation with yourself. Also to enhance your capacity to hold a quality of space that is compassionate and loving, and where shame is not invited into that space. It might emerge, but you have the opportunity to decide, like, oh, is this helpful right now? Do I need to go into a shame story because I'm being activated here because I'm doing something that's slightly, bringing me into that arousal space? It gives you opportunity to ride that wave and to connect again with the skills and tools that you have available to you, which are inviting you to develop greater flexibility and fluidity, to reach your safe harbor, or your point of feeling like you can calibrate again, and that you can bring yourself into a relative state of equilibrium, with the knowledge that maybe 10 minutes later you might have another wave, and you might have to ride that wave, and the same or similar feelings might arise, but because you've tackled that one in some way, it makes it easier. And I think the ease comes not from the same process physiologically is happening for you, but once the mind is prepared, once our emotional landscape has had a number of opportunities to experience this in a controlled environment, where part of your ego mind, your logic, your rationale can say, okay, well, I can look at my space objectively here and recognize that there are lots of things that are stimulating, there are lots of things that are potentially triggering, but I can see them and recognize them and know them, and understand that beyond those things that feel uncomfortable and scary, this is actually a safe space, and it's safe for me to be here, and I can communicate who I am and know that it's okay for me to do that. Creating opportunities for sharing and for performing and for interacting with others that offer that is hugely valuable. And I say that with the caveat of having the map of your internal landscape, but having the compass with which to navigate that. And that is the work that I feel I have been coming to know and coming to name over the last 10 years, but the last 5-6 years in particular, with the emphasis of that being driven or shaped, should I say, by my personal trauma, and without the tools that I already had available to me through a holistic voice work practice, I would not be here in this way, speaking in this way and sharing the kind of approach that I feel I want to communicate to others and express the value of. And I think part of my processing and consolidation, just to close this reflection up, was standing there with poster ready to share and realizing that if I hadn't been through some of the things that I have been through, I wouldn't be standing there, and I wouldn't be sharing the alchemy of that internal work, and also practical work and theoretical work and research and creative problem solving. I wouldn't be there if those things I'd not experienced. So for me, that felt quite affirming and humbling, and it also offered me meaning as to, this is powerful. I want to be a representative of this work, and I want to embody this work. And I realised that in that moment, actually, that's exactly what I was doing. And I think that's where this deeper sense of confidence has come from. And that feels really good. That feels that there has been a loose thread that was unsure of itself, that has found its way back into the loom and helps me to feel more integrated in my personal expression. And I feel like if my personal expression is the center point, then I can trust absolutely that the impact that will have in all these other regards, in my practice, in my research, in my facilitation, in the entrepreneurial journey, I can trust that all of those things will also feel the impact of that. So I just wanted to bring those insights forward. And in terms of additional reflection points, I hope that the right quality of space will emerge where I can invite some specific talking points about themes in the conference that were coming up, because why not continue the conversation whilst there is still a quality of impetus there. I think it's important to harness that before it goes off into the ether. So if you're watching this, if you've been listening to this, and if you have been following any portion of my own vocal journey, I would say this is the next step and the next stage, ready to embark on another process. So that feels really good and really positive, and by no means is it the end. It's just the continuation or the beginning of another vocal adventure. So